Mom said I couldn't come to Halloween because there's no space. When I saw photos online, there was a seat with my name and my brother's girlfriend sitting in it. The glow of my phone screen in the darkened room felt like an accusation. It was just after midnight, the 1st of November, and the ghost of Halloween still lingered in the air. I'd spent the evening on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, feeling a dull, persistent ache of loneliness I'd told myself was just seasonal melancholy. I'd rewatched an old horror movie, eaten half a bag of candy meant for trick-or-treaters we never get, and tried very hard not to think about the family party I wasn't at. My mother's voice from 2 days prior was a faint tinny echo in my mind. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, but there's just no space this year. With Mark and Sarah, and your uncle's family coming, we're absolutely packed to the gills. We'll do something soon, just the two of us. I promise." It was a familiar script, a gentle, regretful dismissal that I had learned to swallow without complaint. It was easier than arguing. It was easier than pointing out that my uncle's family hadn't come to a holiday in 5 years. I was scrolling through my cousin's social media feed, a masochistic ritual I performed after every family event I was excluded from. It was my way of attending from a distance, of gathering the scraps of celebration so I could at least pretend I knew what had happened. There were the usual photos, my aunt in a clumsy witch costume, my uncle looking bored in a plastic vampire cape, my younger cousins sticky with chocolate, and then I saw it. The picture that stopped my heart. It was a wide shot of the dining room table, laden with a Halloween feast. Everyone was seated, smiling, their faces painted and silly. The table was perfectly set with themed plates and little pumpkin decorations. And in the foreground, slightly out of focus but still painfully undeniably clear, was an empty chair. Or rather, a chair that had just been vacated for the photo, and on the table, propped against a wine glass, was a little black place card with elegant, spidery white calligraphy. My name. And sitting in the chair next to it, her arms slung casually around my brother Mark's shoulders, was his girlfriend, Sarah. She was wearing a cat ear headband and a triumphant little smirk. She was in my seat. No, not just my seat. She was at my place. A setting with my name on it. A space they had specifically reserved for the person they had specifically told me had no space. The air left my lungs in a rush. It wasn't just an empty chair. It was a performance. A piece of theater designed to prove a point I hadn't even realized was being made. The name card was the detail that tipped it from casual exclusion into something deliberate, something cruel. They hadn't just forgotten me or run out of room. They had set a place for me and then given it to someone else, leaving my name there as a silent, mocking testament to my absence. It was a symbol of my replacement. The phone felt heavy, cold, a block of ice in my trembling hand. I zoomed in, my thumb shaking. My name, written in my mother's perfect, beautiful script. The same script from every birthday card, every passive-aggressive note left on the counter, every check she'd ever written me. It was her handwriting. She had written my name, placed it on the table, and then watched as another woman took my place. The casualness of Sarah's pose, the smug contentment on her face, the way my brother beamed beside her, it was a portrait of a happy family that had surgically, neatly, excised me from the frame. My first impulse was a hot, blinding wave of rage. I wanted to throw my phone against the wall. I wanted to get in my car and drive the 45 minutes to my mother's house and scream until my throat was raw. I wanted to hold that photo up to her face and demand an explanation. But I knew what the explanation would be. It would be a torrent of gaslighting and feigned confusion. "Oh, honey, you're being so sensitive." Sarah just sat there for a moment. "The place card was a little joke. We were missing you." Or, "You're twisting things. You always twist things. Why do you have to be so dramatic?" I had heard it all before. My reactions were always the problem, never the actions that caused them. My pain was an inconvenience, an overreaction, a character flaw. For years I had believed it. I had spent my entire adult life trying to be less sensitive, less dramatic, less me. I had shrunk myself down, bit by bit, to fit into the cramped, airless space they allowed for me in the family, and now they were telling me even that tiny space was gone. But something was different this time. The sheer, theatrical cruelty of the name card broke through years of conditioning. It was so blatant, so undeniable. It was proof. It wasn't a feeling I was having or an interpretation I was making. It was a photograph of a place card with my name on it, in a place I was told I couldn't be, with my replacement sitting right there. The rage cooled into something harder and heavier. A cold, dense certainty settled in my stomach. This was it. This was the end of pretending. I saved the photo to my phone, taking a screenshot just in case it was deleted. I saved the entire post. Evidence. The word popped into my head, clinical and detached. I needed to treat this like a crime scene, because it felt like one. The scene of the murder of a relationship. The final, fatal blow to the hope that I was a wanted and loved member of my own family. I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch as the moon tracked across the sky, the blue light of my phone illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I scrolled back through years of photos, of holidays, of birthdays. I started to see the pattern, the slow, insidious erosion of my place. It started subtly after Mark met Sarah 2 years ago. A family dinner I wasn't invited to because it was last minute. A weekend trip to the cabin that I only heard about afterward because they forgot to add me to the group chat. My mother's excuses were always so plausible, so drenched in love and regret that I had always given her the benefit of the doubt. "We were just talking about you, wishing you were here," she'd say, and I'd feel a pang of guilt for my own flicker of suspicion. She was a master of the loving injury. The wound delivered with a kiss. Sarah was everything I wasn't, and everything my mother had always wanted me to be. She was quiet where I was outspoken. She was a nurse, a practical, respectable profession, while I was a graphic designer, a job my mother referred to as playing on the computer. Sarah was agreeable, malleable. She nodded and smiled and never challenged my mother's opinions. I had watched, with a growing sense of dread, as my mother molded her into the daughter she'd always wished for. She took Sarah shopping, taught her family recipes I'd begged to learn for years, and shared intimate stories about her childhood that I was only hearing for the first time, secondhand, from my brother. I was being phased out, replaced by a newer, better model. And I had let it happen, because every time I tried to voice my hurt, I was the one who ended up apologizing. At 6 in the morning, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. A cheerful text message with a string of pumpkin and ghost emojis. "Morning, sweetie. So sorry you couldn't be with us last night. We missed you. Hope you had a cozy night in. Let's get lunch this week." The casual, breezy hypocrisy of it was breathtaking. It was as if she were daring me to challenge her. As if she knew I had seen the photo and was testing me, waiting to see if I would fall back into my old role, swallow my pain, and pretend everything was fine. I stared at the message, the words blurring through a film of sleepless tears. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, the old habits kicked in. The desire to keep the peace, to avoid the fight, to just type back, "Sounds great," and let the poison continue to seep into my soul. But the image of the name card was burned into my mind. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unknow it. I typed a simple, cold reply. I saw the photos. I saw my place card. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The phone was silent for a full 10 minutes. I imagined the frantic conversation happening on the other end, the hissing whispers between her and my father, or maybe a quick call to Mark to coordinate their stories. Then, my phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I took a deep breath and answered, putting it on speaker. My partner, Liam, had woken up and was now sitting beside me, his hand a warm, steady presence on my back. He'd seen the photo with me, his face a mask of quiet fury on my behalf. "Hello?" I said, my voice surprisingly level. "Hi, sweetie." My mother's voice was syrupy sweet, but I could hear the brittle edge underneath. "I got your text. I think there's been a little misunderstanding." Here it comes, I thought. The gaslighting overture. There's no misunderstanding, Mom. I saw the picture of the dinner table. There was a place set for me, with my name on it. Sarah was sitting there. You told me there was no space. I laid the facts out, plain and simple, leaving no room for her usual evasions. There was a pause. "Oh, that," she said with a little laugh, a sound that was meant to be dismissive but was laced with panic. "That was just a silly little thing. We were all saying how much we missed you, so I put a card out for you, just as a little tribute, like you were there in spirit. Sarah just happened to be sitting there when your cousin took the picture. You're reading way too much into this. You're being so sensitive." The familiar accusation. The classic defense. My sensitivity was the problem. Not her duplicity. Not her cruelty. Liam squeezed my shoulder, a silent message of support. It fortified me. "It wasn't a tribute, Mom. It was a message. You set a place for me. A place you told me didn't exist, and you gave it to someone else. That's not a tribute. That's a replacement. The word hung in the air between us, sharp and ugly. I had never spoken to her like this before. I had never refused to accept her version of reality. I could feel her shock vibrating down the phone line. Well, I don't know what to tell you if you're going to be this dramatic and accusatory. Her voice hardened, the sweetness curdling into venom. Frankly, this is why we hesitate to invite you to things sometimes. You always manage to find a problem. You make everything so difficult. Sarah is a joy to be around. She's easygoing. She doesn't create drama. And there it was, the confession, wrapped in an insult. It wasn't about space. It was about preference. She preferred Sarah. She preferred the easy, compliant daughter figure to her actual, complicated daughter. So, you lied, I said, my voice quiet. You lied to me about there being no space because you'd rather have her there than me. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A fact finally dragged out into the light. The silence on the other end was her answer. It was a deep, damning silence that confirmed everything. She had no practiced, loving excuse for that. I had cornered her with the truth, and she had nothing left to fight with but her anger. You know what? She finally snapped, her voice dripping with indignation. I am done with this conversation. I have a wonderful son and a wonderful future daughter-in-law who appreciate me. I don't need this negativity. You can call me back when you're ready to apologize for these ridiculous accusations. And then she hung up. Just like that. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the silence of the room rushing in to fill the void. Apologize. She wanted me to apologize. For what? For noticing? For finally saying, out loud, what she had been doing to me for years. Liam pulled me into a hug, and I finally broke. The tears I'd been holding back all night came in a torrent, hot and ragged. It was a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight, crushing the air from my chest. It was the grief for the mother I had always wanted and the dawning, horrific realization that I was never, ever going to have her. The woman on the phone was a stranger. A cruel, manipulative stranger who had just confirmed my deepest fear. I was not enough. I was disposable. I had been replaced. That phone call was the beginning of the war. But it was also the beginning of my liberation. Lying there in Liam's arms, I felt the last thread of hope for my mother's love finally snap. And in its place, something new began to grow. It was a tiny, fragile seedling of self-worth, a quiet voice in the back of my mind that whispered, "It's not you. It was never you." This was the hidden advantage she couldn't see. She thought she had broken me, but she had only broken the chains of delusion that had kept me bound to her for 30 years. She had finally pushed me too far, and I wasn't going to just crawl back, begging for scraps of affection anymore. I was going to get answers. I was going to get justice, even if the only justice I could get was for myself. The first step was therapy. I'd been in and out of it for years, trying to fix my anxiety and my sensitivity, the very things my mother had always pointed to as my core flaws. I found a new therapist, a woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, who specialized in family trauma and narcissistic abuse. In our first session, I just laid it all out. The Halloween photo, the phone call, the years of subtle digs, of being compared to my brother, of my accomplishments being dismissed while his were celebrated. I told her about the time my mother forgot my birthday for 3 days and then acted like I was being unreasonable for being hurt. I told her about the constant, draining pressure to be perfect, to be quiet, to be less. Dr. Sharma listened without interruption, her expression calm and validating. When I finished, my voice hoarse, she didn't offer platitudes. She offered a term. What you're describing, she said gently, is a classic dynamic with a narcissistic parent. You've been cast in the role of the scapegoat, while your brother is the golden child. His girlfriend is now an extension of him, and therefore also golden. The scapegoat is the person who carries all the family's dysfunction. They are blamed for all the problems, and their purpose is to make the narcissist feel powerful and in control. Hearing it defined, clinical and clear, was like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know was there. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. I was a victim of a predictable, documented pattern of emotional abuse. Her advice was both simple and monumentally difficult. We need to build a case, she said, echoing the word that had come to me that first night. Not for a court of law, but for the court of your own mind. You need to gather your evidence to fight back against the gaslighting, especially the gaslighting that comes from inside your own head. So I started to write. I bought a thick leather-bound journal and began to document everything. I started with Halloween, writing down every detail of the photo, the phone call, the text messages. Then I went backwards. I made a timeline of every slight, every exclusion, every lie I could remember. The process was excruciating. It was like excavating a mass grave. Each memory I unearthed was a fresh wound. The Christmas, she gave me a gift certificate to a weight loss program in front of the whole family. The time she told my high school boyfriend that I was prone to hysterics. The way she'd constantly praise Sarah's calm demeanor in front of me. A thinly veiled criticism of my own more passionate nature. I dug through old emails, text messages, and even photo albums, looking for patterns. And they were everywhere. Photos where I was physically on the edge of the group. Emails where she would praise me with one hand and cut me down with the other. So proud of your art award, honey, though I do worry about you making a stable living from it. While I was building my internal case, my mother was building her external one against me. The retaliation started subtly. My Aunt Carol, my mother's younger sister and my only real ally in the family, called me about a week after the incident. "Your mother called me," she said, her voice heavy with a familiar resignation. "She's spinning a story. She's telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown, that you're making wild accusations because you're jealous of Sarah." I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. It was happening exactly as I knew it would. She was assassinating my character, using my history of anxiety as a weapon to discredit me. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice small. "I told her she was full of it," Aunt Carol said, and I could have cried with relief. "I've seen how she treats you your whole life. I've seen this coming. She did the same thing to our cousin decades ago when she felt threatened by her. She freezes people out. This isn't new behavior, honey. It's just the first time you've refused to play along." Aunt Carol's validation was a lifeline. She remembered things I had forgotten, or things I had been too young to understand. She told me stories about my mother's own childhood, her intense jealousy of her siblings, her need to be the center of attention, the favorite of her parents. It was a pattern, passed down through generations. Then my brother Mark called. His tone was breezy, conciliatory. "Hey, sis. Mom told me you guys had a bit of a tiff. Look, I think this has all been a big misunderstanding. Mom loves you. Why don't you just call her? Smooth things over. Thanksgiving is coming up. Let's not have this weirdness." He was her flying monkey, sent to do her bidding, to pull me back into the fold. He hadn't called to ask for my side of the story. He hadn't called to see if I was okay. He called to manage the situation, to quell the drama I was creating. "It wasn't a tiff, Mark," I said, my voice cold. "It was a deliberate act of cruelty, and you were part of it. You sat there and let it happen." I could hear him sigh, a sound of pure frustration. "Oh my God. Are you still on about that? It was a joke, a stupid place card. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Sarah feels awful. You've made her feel completely unwelcome." The blame shifted seamlessly to me. I was the one making Sarah feel bad. My pain was an attack on her comfort. "Does she?" I asked. "Does she feel awful about sitting in a chair at a party she was invited to, while I was told there was no room for me? Does she feel awful about taking my place at a table that literally had my name on it?" The questions were met with angry silence. He had no defense. He was just repeating the script he'd been given. "You know what?" he said, his voice turning ugly. "Mom was right. You're impossible. You just want to be a victim." He hung up. Another door slammed shut. The two people who were supposed to be my closest family had now both explicitly chosen someone else over me, and then blamed me for it. The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were a cold war of silence and proxy battles. My mother continued her smear campaign, and I continued my documentation. I felt like I was preparing for a trial. Liam was my constant support, reading through my journal entries, listening to me cry, and reminding me that I was sane. "They want you to think you're crazy because it absolves them of their own terrible behavior," he'd say, holding me tight. "Don't let them win." My sessions with Dr. Sharma became my strategy sessions. We talked about boundaries, about how to respond if and when they reached out again. We role-played conversations. She gave me tools to manage the emotional flashbacks, grounding techniques to use when the panic set in. The invitation for Thanksgiving came via a text from my father, a man who had perfected the art of strategic neutrality, which was really just another form of enabling. "Hope you'll be joining us for Thanksgiving. Your mother is making her famous pecan pie." It was a test. an attempt to pretend nothing had happened, to see if I would just fall in line, show up, and smile through the pain, preserving the fragile illusion of a happy family. For days, I agonized over it. Part of me, the wounded child part, desperately wanted to go. I wanted the familiar smells of my childhood home, the comfort of tradition. I wanted to believe that if I just showed up, things could go back to normal. But Dr. Sharma asked me a simple question that cut through the confusion. What is your goal? If you go, what do you hope to achieve? I realized my goal wasn't to have a nice dinner. My goal was to be heard, to have my experience acknowledged. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this would not happen if I just showed up and played along. It would be seen as a surrender. It would prove to my mother that her tactics worked, that she could treat me however she wanted and I would always come back. So I made a strategic decision. I texted my father back. Thank you for the invitation. I will not be attending Thanksgiving this year. However, I am willing to meet with Mom, Mark, and you to discuss what happened. I will not pretend it didn't. It was an ultimatum, and I knew it. I was drawing a line in the sand. I was refusing to participate in the charade any longer. The response was swift, and this time, it came from my mother. I am shocked and deeply hurt by your message. After all I do for this family, there is nothing to discuss. You are the one who has created this problem with your accusations. The door is always open to you when you are ready to stop this nonsense and be a part of the family again. It was a masterclass in narcissistic deflection. She was the victim. I was the aggressor. My request for a conversation was an attack. Her refusal to acknowledge my pain was a sign of her magnanimity. It was clear that no real conversation was going to happen. Not on her terms. So I decided to create my own terms. My Aunt Carol had also been invited to Thanksgiving, and she was just as disgusted by the situation as I was. We formulated a plan. She would go, and she would be my witness. She would observe, and she would listen. Thanksgiving Day was one of the loneliest days of my life. Liam and I made our own small dinner, but the whole time I was picturing them, all of them, gathered around that same dining room table. Was there a place card for me this time? Or had I been fully erased? Around 7 that evening, Aunt Carol called. You were right not to come, she said, her voice low and furious. It was a performance. Your mother spent the entire dinner talking about how heartbroken she is, how she doesn't know what she did to deserve such a difficult, ungrateful daughter. My stomach twisted. She told everyone you refused to come because you're having some kind of mental health crisis, and that you've been saying terrible, untrue things about her and Sarah. Mark and Sarah just sat there, nodding along. Sarah even teared up at one point, talking about how she just wants everyone to get along. It was worse than I could have imagined. She wasn't just discrediting me. She was staging a public pity party to garner sympathy and paint me as the villain. But then Aunt Carol gave me the piece of evidence I didn't know I needed. Your father tried to defend you just a little, he said. Now, Helen, she's just hurt. And your mother turned on him and said, clear as a bell, she has nothing to be hurt about. I ran out of chairs. It was a simple issue of logistics. If she can't understand that, it's her problem. And then, not 5 minutes later, your cousin asked if he could borrow a folding chair for his kid's soccer game. And your mother said, of course. Dear, there are at least a half dozen in the garage. The breakthrough. The key discovery. A direct, bald-faced lie. Uttered in front of a witness. She hadn't run out of chairs. She hadn't run out of space. She had a garage full of them. It was such a small, stupid detail. But it was everything. It was the crack in her fortress of lies. Aunt Carol had heard it. My father had heard it. My cousin had heard it. The lie was exposed. It wasn't just my word against hers anymore. I spent the next month preparing. The big family Christmas party was my target. It was the one event of the year that everyone attended. The extended family, the old friends. It was my mother's Super Bowl, the night she held court as the perfect matriarch of her perfect family. I knew it was a huge risk. It could blow up in my face, leaving me more isolated than ever. But I also knew I couldn't move on until I had confronted them. Not just individually, but together. I needed to speak my truth in the same public forum where she had been speaking her lies. I wrote down what I was going to say. I practiced it with Liam and with Dr. Sharma. I assembled my evidence on my phone. The screenshot of the Halloween photo, a transcript of my mother's voicemail lies, and a detailed, bullet-pointed timeline of the events. I was terrified. My hands shook every time I thought about it. But I was also filled with a sense of purpose I had never felt before. I was no longer fighting for her love. I was fighting for my own reality. When I walked into my parents' house on Christmas Eve, the festive cheer felt like a physical assault. The smell of pine and cinnamon, the sound of Bing Crosby crooning from the speakers, the sight of my entire extended family laughing and drinking eggnog. It was all a scene from a life that no longer felt like mine. My mother saw me first. Her face froze for a fraction of a second, a flicker of panic in her eyes, before she composed it into a mask of beatific warmth. "Darling!" she exclaimed, rushing forward to hug me. "I'm so glad you decided to come. Merry Christmas!" Her arms felt like a cage. I stood stiffly until she let go. I saw Mark and Sarah across the room. They both looked away, suddenly fascinated by the decorations on the Christmas tree. My father gave me a weak, worried smile. Only Aunt Carol met my eyes, giving me a small, determined nod. I spent the first hour making small talk, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I felt like a soldier behind enemy lines, waiting for the signal to attack. The signal came after dinner, when everyone was gathered in the living room, opening presents. My mother was in her element, basking in the attention, directing the proceedings with the air of a benevolent queen. When there was a lull in the gift-giving, I stood up. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me. I felt a wave of dizziness, but I planted my feet, took a deep breath, and began. "I have something I need to say." I started, my voice shaking slightly but clear. "I'm not here tonight to celebrate. I'm here to tell the truth. For the past 2 months, my mother has been telling many of you that I am unstable, that I am dramatic, and that I am ungrateful. She has been telling you this because I called her out on a lie." My mother's face went pale. "Now is not the time or the place for this," she said, her voice tight with fury. "You are ruining Christmas." "You ruined Halloween," I shot back, my voice gaining strength. "You told me there was no room for me at your party. But that wasn't true, was it?" I looked around the room, making eye contact with my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. This is what I saw that night. I pulled out my phone and cast the Halloween photo to the large television screen above the fireplace. The image of the dining table, of Sarah in my chair, of my name on the place card, filled the room. A collective gasp went through the crowd. "My mother told me there was no space," I said, my voice ringing with clarity. But as you can see, there was a space. A space specifically labeled for me. A space she gave to someone else. When I confronted her, she called me sensitive and dramatic. She told me I was making it up. I then turned my gaze directly on her. "And at Thanksgiving, you told Dad, Aunt Carol, and Cousin David that you had simply run out of chairs. But then you offered David the half-dozen folding chairs you keep in the garage. So which is it, Mom? Was there no space? Or did you just not want me here?" The silence in the room was absolute, thick with shock and discomfort. My mother looked trapped, her face a mottled red. She opened her mouth, but for the first time in her life, no words came out. She looked to my brother for help. Mark stood up, his face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous," he stammered. "You're ambushing her. This is a private family matter. She made it a public matter when she started spreading lies about my mental health to everyone in this room," I countered, my eyes not leaving my mother's face. "I am just correcting the record. Publicly." I looked at Sarah, who was staring at the floor, looking mortified. "And Sarah," I said, my voice softening slightly, "I don't know how much you knew about this, but you sat in that chair. You participated. You smiled for the camera. And you have sat by silently while my mother and brother have lied about me and attacked my character." She wouldn't look at me. My father was just staring at my mother, a look of profound disappointment on his face. He had heard the lie about the chairs. He knew I was telling the truth. My mother finally found her voice. It was not the voice of a loving matriarch. It was a low, vicious hiss. "How dare you?" she seethed. "You come into my home on Christmas and you do this? You ungrateful child. After everything I have done for you. What have you done for me, Mom?" I asked. A genuine question. "You have criticized me, you have undermined me, you have lied to me, and you have tried to replace me. What you've done is cause me a lifetime of pain and self-doubt. But that's over now." I looked around at the stunned faces of my family. "I'm not asking any of you to pick a side," I said. "I'm just telling you the truth. The narrative you have been fed about me is false. It is a story designed to protect a bully and excuse her cruelty. And I will not be the villain in that story anymore." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then, I turned to my mother, my brother, and Sarah. "This is the last time you will see me for a very, very long time. I am done. I am done with the lies, the manipulation, and the abuse. I am choosing myself. I am finally choosing my own peace over your comfort. And with that, I turned and walked out. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't look back. Aunt Carol followed me out, grabbing my coat from the hook. As the front door closed behind me, I could hear the eruption of shouting inside, but it was distant, muffled. It was their noise, not mine. I had said my piece. I had presented my evidence. The verdict was up to them, but it no longer mattered to me. My own verdict was in. I was innocent. The aftermath was messy, just as I'd expected. The family fractured. Some relatives called me, offering tentative support. Others cut me off completely, siding with my mother. My father called a few days later. He sounded tired, defeated. He apologized. "I should have seen it," he said. "I should have stood up to her years ago. I'm sorry, kiddo. I failed you." It wasn't everything, but it was something. A crack in the denial. He and my mother, I learned, were starting counseling. I didn't have high hopes, but it was a step. I never heard from my brother again. He made his choice. He chose the woman who enabled him, and the woman who would never challenge him. He chose easy. I grieved for the loss of my brother more than I grieved for my mother. I grieved for the boy who used to be my best friend, before the poison of our mother's favoritism twisted him into a stranger. I went no contact. I blocked their numbers, their social media accounts. I instructed my father and Aunt Carol not to pass on any messages. I needed a clean break. I needed to build a new life, a new family, one based on truth and mutual respect. The first year was hard. It was filled with therapy, with journaling, with learning how to parent myself, how to validate my own feelings. Liam was my rock, my chosen family. We started our own traditions. We spent holidays with friends, or with his family, who welcomed me with an uncomplicated warmth that felt like a miracle. I learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up for you. It's about who sees you, who hears you, and who loves you not in spite of your complexities, but because of them. The justice I got was incomplete. My mother never admitted what she did. She never gave me a genuine apology. In her mind, she is likely still the victim, and I am still the ungrateful daughter who ruined Christmas. But I came to realize, through months of work with Dr. Sharma, that the justice I was seeking couldn't come from her. It had to come from me. Justice was walking out that door. Justice was blocking her number. Justice was refusing to participate in the toxic dynamic any longer. Justice was reclaiming my own sanity and my own story. It's been 3 years now. 3 years since the Halloween that changed everything. My life is quieter now, smaller in some ways, but so much bigger in others. My anxiety is manageable. I no longer walk on eggshells. I no longer second-guess my every feeling. I trust myself. I have built a life for myself that is safe and authentic. I have a community of people who love and support the real me, not the muted, apologetic version I used to be. The scars are still there. They ache sometimes. On holidays or birthdays, a phantom limb of a family I no longer have. But they are just scars, not open wounds. They are a reminder of a battle I fought and won. Last night was Halloween. Liam and I hosted a small party for our friends at our own apartment. We carved pumpkins, watched cheesy horror movies, and handed out candy to the neighborhood kids. There were no assigned seats, no hidden agendas, no cruel theatrical performances. There was just laughter and warmth and the easy comfort of being with people who choose to be with you. At one point, I looked around the room at the happy, smiling faces of my chosen family, and my heart felt full. There was a place for me here. Not a place card with my name on it, but a real, tangible space that I had carved out for myself, built on a foundation of truth, boundaries, and self-love. And in that space, I was finally, truly, gloriously free.